Basements. More often than not, it's where stuff ends up. Dusty boxes, faded memories, stuff. Sometimes that stuff, just stuff. But other times, it's more. While digging through totes in a forgotten basement, a wooden box was discovered. Inside were various belongings of a Henry Mossburg and his family. So who were the Mossburgs? The first settlers of Liberty Township in Wells County, Indiana, were James Jackson and Henry Mossburg, who arrived during the winter of 1836 to 1837. Henry Mossburg was of German descent and had been raised on a farm in Maryland. By the age of 21, he could not speak a word of English. Around 22, he enrolled in an English school and began preparing to become a teacher. He eventually became fluent in both German and English and traveled down to Virginia, where he began teaching. After living in Virginia for a few years, he married Jane Thrailkill and moved to Clinton County, Ohio. While living there, the War of 1812 broke out. Henry offered his services to his country and fought under General Harrison for nearly 2 years. He endured the hardships of that uneven conflict before finally returning to his family in Ohio. In 1819, Henry moved his family to Wayne County, Indiana, and later to Delaware County, Indiana. Finally, in 1837, they moved again, this time to Wells County. There, Henry settled on a tract of land along the border with Huntington County. At the time, he was only the second settler in Liberty Township. Wells County had barely been settled. There was no county seat, and the nearest market was in Muncie. Henry moved into a cabin that his sons, Daniel and Henry Jr., had come out and built the previous June. Henry Sr.'s health was poor, and in the summer of 1838, he developed consumption. Around the start of November, he passed away. The family was left nearly helpless in the wilderness, with almost no one nearby to turn to. Son Daniel walked to Muncie on foot, days before his father's death, to buy burial clothes. The trip took 4 days. Those were trying times for the widowed mother and her children, times never to be forgotten. There was no cabinet maker in the area, and no one who could construct a coffin. A neighbor who had bought poplar lumber to build a wagon box donated the wood. Using 8 penny nails, a plain coffin was hastily nailed together. Into it were placed the earthly remains of Henry Mossburg. He was buried on a hill he had chosen before his death, on his own land. That land would come to be known as the Mossburg Cemetery, where many of his descendants, relatives by marriage, and other Liberty Township residents would one day be buried. Henry Sr. and Jane had at least 11 children. Those who lived into adulthood included Rebecca, Matilda, Sarah, Daniel, Henry, Hiram, James, and Ethelinda. Numerous residents of Wells County can trace their ancestry through the Mossburg family tree. One of their descendants, a great-grandson named Roy Mossburg, was born in 1897 in Liberty Center, a small town in the heart of Liberty Township, Wells County. In the early 1920s, Roy became a cashier at the Liberty Center Deposit Bank, which had opened in 1907 and was located just south of what is now the Liberty Center gas station. Around 10:15 a.m. on April 25, 1930, a young couple pulled up to the bank in a green Buick Roadster. After a fond kiss, the man stepped out and walked into the bank. Upon entering, the man pulled a gun on Roy Mossburg, stating, "Stick him up and hand over the cash." "Come in and get it," Mr. Mossburg said. "I haven't any gun." "Where is the cash?" "In the safe and in the cash drawer." "Get the money out of the safe," was the next order. "You get it," Mr. Mossburg said, glancing out the window and noticing postmistress Nova Cole watching him with his hands raised. Roy gave her a subtle wave to tip her off, prompting her to alert the men at the nearby garage about the robbery in progress. While about to exit the bank, the bandit turned and shook Roy's hand, saying, "You're a good scout." The young couple made off with $1,460. Several witnessed the auto escape going south 4 miles, then west. Ross Athan reported his son Mark seeing the roadster enter an orchard at the old Joe Jackson farm, and the bandit pair switched to a Ford roadster parked at the location. Officers working the Liberty Center bank robbery, Sheriff Luster Bowman, Deputy Barney Rupright, and Bluffton Police Chief A.N. Plessinger, quickly learned the same couple had also robbed a small store near the Adams-J County line. Witnesses there described a man pulling a revolver, taking just $2.50, shaking hands, and driving off without paying for 12 gallons of gas. A few suspects were picked up around Muncie, but no identification stuck, until cashier Roy Mossburg pointed to a 22-year-old named Joel C. Stamper. Investigators soon connected Joel and his wife, Jean, to another robbery, the 12-mile state bank job in Cass County, carried out with the same method, Joel going in alone while Jean waited in the car. Stamper escaped the Muncie jail days later by smashing a lock, and Jean was arrested as a possible accomplice. On October 18th, officers finally recaptured Joel Stamper after surrounding him with nearly 40 men. He had been hiding in a fully furnished underground room beneath his stepfather's corn crib, living there by day and sneaking into the farmhouse at night. Multiple counties wanted him for robberies, including the 12-mile bank job. 2 days later, Gene Stamper made front-page news by confessing to being the getaway driver during the 12-mile bank robbery. Joel confessed soon after and received 15 years at Pendleton. Gene got 1 to 14 years at the Indianapolis Women's Prison. In 1931, Gene escaped with another inmate by simply walking out through an unlocked door and climbing over the wall. Witnesses later spotted the pair driving toward Fort Wayne with 3 men. Gene was later recaptured near Marion, Indiana, following a violent arrest in which she resisted officers. She was sentenced to 2 to 12 years at the Indianapolis Women's Prison. However, she escaped once again, this time alongside criminal Alan Daugherty. While other inmates ate their meal, the two lowered themselves from a window using knotted bedsheets. She was apprehended again the following day near Summitville, Indiana, and returned to prison to serve the remainder of her sentence. Eventually, cashier Roy Mossburg, his wife Anoni, and Liberty Center's Miss Faye Morris visited Joel C. Stamper at the Pendleton Reformatory. During that visit, Joel broke down and finally admitted to robbing the Liberty Center Bank. He described stealing a car in Decatur, spending the night with Jean, committing the robbery, then heading to Indianapolis and eventually Tulsa, where they spent the summer. Joel later died in 1936. After serving her sentence, Jean was released and had no further encounters with the law. The Liberty Center Deposit Bank was lost during the Depression and was eventually purchased by the Citizens Telephone Company. Roy Mossburg and his wife Anoni raised a large family. One of their sons, Louis Glenn Mossburg, honorably served his country as a second lieutenant in the United States Army Air Forces and was killed in action in the Pacific during World War II. Roy passed away in 1979. In 2024, the Liberty Center Gas and Deli, a popular stop for fuel and food, was robbed when a suspect produced a firearm and demanded all the cash in the register. The suspects are still at large. Lucky for them, the old-timers weren't in the gas station eating breakfast that morning. If they had been, this story would have ended a whole lot differently.